Welcome to the G5 Hive and the next installment of our Worker Bee series, where we deep dive into the G5 college football landscape with the folks that know the teams the best. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review. Today, we'll be heading over to the Mountain West Conference and taking a look at the Utah State Aggies, who finished 4-8 in 2024. They wrapped up their 2025 spring practice with a spring game on April 19th. We have a special guest joining us today. He is the owner, publisher, editor, and recruiting specialist for the only website for Utah State Aggie football and hoops recruiting, the Big Blue USU Aggie News. He is happily married to Amber and a father of 6. He is Brian Phillips. Brian can be found on X at Brian Phillips A1. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Justice, thanks for having me on again, man. It's good to see you.
It's good to see you. It's getting it's getting time, right? Like we're, I don't know, less than a week and a half, I guess, away from week 0.
Right.
Week 1's right around the corner. So college football's back, and yeah, I'm excited for it, and I'm excited to learn some more about the Utah State Aggies today.
There's a lot to learn. There's a lot to learn. A lot of turnover. New coaching staff. A lot to learn.
Well, before we get into that, for those who are tuning in to the G5 Hive for the first time, you can tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been covering Utah State football.
So I've been covering Utah State football for about 15 years now. I started out freelance for a couple of years. I got picked up by 24/7 Sports and ran with them till 2021. And then they started to move away from the G5 arena and just focus on P4 schools. So they dropped our contract. I wasn't really sure what to do for a couple of months, and I had it suggested to me to try my own thing. So I kind of took what I'd put together with 24/7 Sports, put together BigBlueUSUAggieNews.com, and here I am 5 years later. So alive and kicking still.
Well, we're big fans. You do great work over there, and if folks aren't following you and are interested in Utah State news, they need to follow you and check out your website. Like you're the go-to source for Aggies news for sure.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right. Well, let's move over to some Aggies football. And in back-to-back seasons, the Aggies have a new head coach. This year, the Aggies have hired Bronco Mendenhall. Mendenhall comes to Utah State via New Mexico, where he served as head coach for just one season. Prior to New Mexico, he served as the head coach at Virginia from 2016 to 2021. Prior to that, he was over at BYU. But what can you tell us about Coach Mendenhall and what he brings to the table for the Aggies?
So Coach Mendenhall, still kind of getting used to saying Coach Mendenhall. So little different. Never thought I'd see that guy on our sideline, but it's been good so far. Good report so far. But Coach Mendenhall, 18 years as a head coach, 16 seasons of bowl eligibility, 140 career wins. He's the 13th highest active winning coach. He sent 115 players to the NFL. He's mature. He brings stability. He's familiar with the area, with the state of Utah, and what it takes to win at the level that Utah State is ascending to, moving into the Pac-12 or Pac whatever is kind of what I have called it, since we've only got 9, 10 in hoops. I don't think we're done expanding there. So to me, it's the Pac whatever. To the commissioner and the schools, it's the Pac-12. But everybody that I've talked to raves about Coach Mendenhall and just how different he is than most head coaches. He's a straight shooter. He's got a no-nonsense style about him. And I think the kids actually find that refreshing these days, rather than the guys that are rah-rah and coming into your couch on home visits and jumping up and down and, and all over social media. Bronco does none of that. He's just straightforward. I am who I am, and I'm not changing for nobody.
I mean, I would agree with you. Like, I think Coach Mendenhall is a great coach. I mean, the job he did last season, I think, like, he didn't get enough credit. I think, like, people look, oh, he went 5-7. Well, like, no one in their right minds would have told you that New Mexico was going to win 5 games,
right,
and have a chance to be bowl eligible in the last game of the year. Like, nobody would have ever said that in a million years. I thought, right. I mean, he did a phenomenal job there at New Mexico. And like you said, he just wins. That's what he does.
Right.
And like, to me, like, the job he did at New Mexico was as impressive as anything he's ever done in coaching, in my opinion, just because, like, I know, like, what that program is, what they've looked like, the talent, all those sorts of things, man. And like in my opinion, like, he had, I mean, I know the record wasn't a winning season, but he had a winning season in my mind.
Right. Especially when it comes to New Mexico standards, to be honest. But you hit the nail on the head, Justice. All he does is win. And more importantly, he builds. Yes. You know, New Mexico is the only job he's walked away from without putting something together first. You know, multiple seasons at BYU, 6 seasons, I want to say, at Virginia. Like, he doesn't just put in 2 or 3 years of work someplace and then I'm out of here. You know, he comes in, he puts a plan together, and he builds. And that's what Utah State needs right now, is a builder.
Well, as it often happens when you get a new head coach, that means new assistants and coordinators. Utah State's obviously no different in that regard, as Bronco has hired Kevin McGivern to be his offensive coordinator. Coach McGivern was the passing game coordinator and wide receiver coach for San Jose State in 2024, and they had the Triple Crown winner, wide receiver there, Nick Nash. So,
right.
But before that, he'd been with the Spartans since 2018. Prior to 2024, he was the offensive coordinator. Last season, Craig Stutzman was the offensive coordinator, but McGivern was the OC there from 2018 through 2023. Brian, I'm very intrigued by this coach, this hire, as Bronco will be without just Jason Beck for the first time in a long time. I think since like 2016, he's had Jason Beck as either a quarterback's coach or an offensive coordinator. Jason's over at your in-state rival, I guess, Utah. But can you describe the type of offense that Coach McGivern plans to run there at Utah State?
So a little background on Coach McGivern. This is his 3rd stint at Utah State. He was the assistant head coach, quarterbacks coach in 2009 under Gary Anderson. He came back in 2013 and 14 under Matt Wells as the offensive coordinator and the quarterbacks coach. And in 2014, he was actually named the National Quarterback Coach of the Year. In 2014, we went through 4 starting quarterbacks. We lost the first 3 guys to injury: Chucky Keaton to injury, Darryl Garrettson to injury, Craig Harrison to injury, and finished up the season with true freshman Kent Myers. And we went to a bowl game and won that bowl game. And so what that tells me, with my experience with Coach McGivern, watching him operate and kind of watching from afar, he'll tailor his offense to fit his personnel. He's not going to try and fit a square peg in a round hole and force anybody to do what he wants to do. He'll look and see what his roster is made of, and he'll make his offense work around the talent that he has. And so that's what's most encouraging to me, is he's a good assessor of talent and how to make it work best for him.
Well, let's get to the position where it all starts on offense, and that is the quarterback. Last season, Aggies fans were on a bit of a roller coaster. Spencer Petras started the first 2 games of the season, got injured in week 2 against Robert Morris. So fans saw Bryson Barnes struggle against USC, but then have a bounce back showing the following week against Utah. Then Spencer came back and would start every game until he got hurt in the first half of that San Diego State game. And then we kind of saw, Bryson, and Bryson looked really good there at the end of the year. Spencer's graduated, so it would appear to be the Bryson Barnes show here in 2025. What type of growth are you hoping to see in Bryson, given he is coming into the season, I assume, knowing he is the QB1?
Bryson Barnes will absolutely be the starter in week 1. So one thing that I would like to see improve with Bryson is his completion percentage. He completed 61.1% of his passes last year. I'd like to see him around 65 or more, just a little more efficient, not a big deal. To go from 61 to 65, you'd really only need to complete 2 or 3 more passes a game. So not a huge stretch, which in my opinion should be doable for him, solely because he's had an entire spring and summer knowing he's the number 1 guy. Last year, he didn't necessarily have the chemistry, perhaps, because he was taking second-team reps, like you said, behind Spencer Petras. So I'd like to see the completion percentage come up. He also threw 12 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. So I'd like to see the touchdown-to-interception ratio improve. If you're going to throw 6 picks, I'd kind of like to see you throw 18 scores, so you've got a 3-to-1 ratio instead. I mean, if you can get higher than 18, then that's great. But, I'd like to see that improve better than 2-to-1.
For those not familiar with Bryson's game, how would you describe it? When I think of him, I think of a true dual threat guy that we saw that on display at the end of the season last year.
Definitely a dual threat guy. He can step back and he can throw the ball, delivers with authority. He can run through his progressions. So he is able to throw a pretty good deep ball, does a pretty decent job of hitting his receivers in stride, especially once he got on more of the same page with the guys last year, the more in-game reps he got. But he's definitely a respectable runner. He can run hard. He's big enough that he can run through tackles, but he's definitely a threat with his feet. And he's an outstanding leader on the field, very mature. He's seen a lot of action. He came to Utah State from Utah. He led the Utes to a Rose Bowl. So he's battle tested, and he's able to jump into the huddle, command the huddle, speak with authority, and guys will follow him anywhere.
Has anyone kind of stood out for that backup role behind Bryson between you got Garcia, Conover, CJ Tiller, Caden Cox?
I would say the number 2 spot is going to fall one of 2 ways, either sophomore Anthony Garcia or 6-year senior Jacob Conover. It kind of just depends on maybe what the scenario may call for. In the event that Bryson Barnes, knock on wood, were to get injured, hopefully he does not, you may see Conover end up taking over. He, I think, is the better pure passer and definitely not as mobile as Barnes or Garcia for that matter, but a more pure passer. And if they're needing someone to deliver the ball in the passing game, they may lean towards Conover. Garcia is much more of an athlete. He started out with McGiven 2 years ago at San Jose State and then followed Coach Brennan from San Jose State to Arizona for a year and now is reunited at Utah State with Kevin McGiven. So he's familiar with Coach McGiven being at San Jose State for a year in 2023. So that may be an advantage for Garcia offense-wise as well, just having that familiarity.
Well, let's move over to the running game, and Aggie fans will need to learn several new names here in 2025 as the top 2 rushers from a season ago, Rasul Faison and Herschel Turner, have hit the portal. Faison is still, I guess, working through some eligibility issues with the NCAA over there at South Carolina, while Turner is off to Nevada. plus Robert Briggs Jr. and Nick Floyd also left. The lone returner from 2024 that registered a carry for the Aggies is Derek Jameson. Plus, staff has added transfers such as Javen Jacobs, who followed Bronco over from New Mexico, and then Miles Davis comes over from BYU. How do you anticipate Coach McGiven utilizing the running backs here in 2025?
From what I understand, it's going to be kind of a running back by committee. So I think your two bell cows are going to be Javen Jacobs and Miles Davis. I think you're going to see a dose of Derek Jameson from time to time. But I definitely think your top two backs are Javen Jacobs and Miles Davis. I'm hearing some good things out of camp about true freshmen, Ravian Larry and Nehemiah Washington, and redshirt freshman preferred walk-on Noah White, I understand, had a really good spring ball, So I'm not opposed to seeing either of those guys get carries from time to time. I'm a big fan of seeing your true freshmen take advantage of that 4-game rule, and you let a guy get some carries here, let a guy get some carries there. But if you're able to keep a guy's red shirt intact, let him get some carries, let him get a little in-game experience if the situation is available, and let those guys kind of save them for later on. But yeah, Jacobs and Davis are definitely our two guys.
So when we look at Javen Jacobs and Miles Davis, how would you describe their play styles? Like, what skill sets do you think they have that they're best suited for? Like for me, I think Javen Jacobs is like an awesome, catcher out of the backfield, pass catcher. But what are your thoughts on those two guys?
Right. So Javen Jacobs can definitely catch passes out of the backfield. I think they could put him in motion and kind of swing him out and into the slot. He can return kicks as well. Really versatile guy. Miles Davis is the bigger of the two. Miles Davis comes in at about 210 or so. So I think he'd be more of your maybe between the tackles runner kind of guy. But Miles Davis, when he came out of high school, initially signed at BYU as a wide receiver. So Miles Davis can also catch the ball out of the backfield. But I think he's more of like a swing route kind of guy where, you can swing him wide, quarterback can turn and throw to him and kind of give him a full head of steam and just fire it out there.
I realize we got a couple weeks before, the first game. But if you had to guess today which running back gets that first carry of the season against UTEP, who would you guess?
I'd go with Javen Jacobs. I just think with him coming in and kind of getting a lot of preseason hype, so to speak, I think Javen Jacobs will get carry number one.
All right. Well, let's move over to these wide receivers. And similar to the running back room, fans will see a lot of new faces. The portal and graduation hit the Aggies hard this season as they returned 0 yards of production from the wide receivers. The staff brings in several transfers that kind of help supplement these losses. But, Brian, what are your expectations for the wide receivers heading into 2025?
So I expect our top 3 spots, your X, Y, and Z spots, to be filled by UCLA transfer Braden Pagan, Texas Tech transfer Brady Boyd in the slot, and your other outside wide receiver is Western Kentucky transfer D. McStarling. Those are the top 3 guys I've heard the most about.
And, in practice, is anyone kind of standing out for you?
Those 3 really. I just, anytime I inquire about who's doing what, and this is carried on all through spring ball, anybody's said this is who the 3 guys are.
Well, a year ago, you had Jalen Royals. He was such a big part of the offense the last 2 seasons when he was healthy. He's now a Kansas City Chief. In your guesstimation today, who do you think kind of will step up and be the lead wide receiver for this Aggies offense here in 2025?
I think it's going to be Braden Pagan. I've heard nothing but good things about him. Just rave reviews about what Braden Pagan brings to the table. So I think Braden Pagan will be the lead, maybe yardage receiver. Maybe out of the slot, when you're talking catches, maybe Brady Boyd would lead the team in receptions, but I think our yardage guy is going to be Braden Pagan.
Well, Brian, the Aggies have one of the top tight ends in Mountain West. They get him back this year. He missed part of last season due to injury, and that's Brock Lane. With the coaching change, what have you been able to learn in terms of how they plan to use the tight ends in this offense?
I think the tight ends are going to be a big part, to be honest. Brock Lane is a fantastic receiver. Josh Sturzer is another sixth-year senior that's really battle-tested. He did a nice job stepping up for Brock when he was hurt last year. And so they're a solid 1-2 punch. And like I said, Coach McGibbon could take a look at what talent he has and make his offense work around what he's got. And so I think you're going to see some not only one tight end sets, but possibly two tight end sets as well this year.
As I mentioned, Lane last season, I guess he tore his ACL, missed the final 5 games. Right. How is his recovery process going, and do you anticipate to see him out there week 1?
So I can tell you this much about Brock. He was a full 100% summer workout participant. And as far as I'm aware, he is full go to be able to start week 1 against UTEP.
Awesome. Like that. He's a difference maker for you guys out there. So kind of excited to see him out there in this offense. Well, let's turn our sights over to this offensive line, and via the portal or graduation, the entire starting offensive line from 2024 is gone. However, they do return. They get a lift as their right guard, Tavo Puaka, is set to return in 2025 after missing 2024 due to injury. As for others returning in this room with experience, you got guard George Melee and tackle Trey Anderson. Beyond that, though, this room looks rather green in terms of game experience. Brian, first things first, how is the recovery process going for Tavo, and do you expect to see him out there week 1?
100% recovered for Tavo. He will absolutely be the starting right guard against UTEP week 1. Full participant in spring ball and summer workouts.
Nice. That's definitely a big boost for this offensive line.
Absolutely.
What are your expectations for this offensive line as we head into the season?
So I want to preface this by saying the cupboard isn't completely bare. So we're returning 46 games from the 2024 team, 46 games, 3 starts, 548 snaps, and 28 knockdowns. So between George Miley, Trey Anderson, and Jared Pele, we've got some returning talent here. Jake Eichhorn, who I anticipate is going to be the starter at right tackle, started 11 of 12 games on the offensive line back in 2022 at a very good Weber State program. I believe they went to the final 8 or maybe final 4 of the FCS playoffs. When their head coach moved on to be the defensive coordinator at BYU, he followed him to BYU. And so he just didn't see the type of action that he wanted to, and spent 2 seasons at BYU and has now moved on for his final season at Utah State. But Jake Eichhorn is going to be fantastic for the Aggies this year.
Let's say at the end of this year, this offensive line as a whole is exceeds your expectations. They're awesome. It's because of that, when we look back, it's going to be, hey, we're going to look at this guy and say, that's who's responsible and why the line played so well. Who is that guy?
I don't know if there's going to be one guy that really stands out. It's the offensive line, as many of you well know, it's a matter of gelling together and everybody just believing in each other. They have to be such a cohesive unit. And, your center needs to be able to communicate to your guards need to be able to communicate to your tackles, and so on and so forth. And so the more reps they can get together as one cohesive unit, is going to make all the difference in the world. So I can't single out just one guy when, as far as position groups go on a football field, they rely on being such a cohesive unit.
Who would you say is the team look to as the leader of the offensive line?
I would probably say Jake Eichhorn. He's the most battle-tested. He's probably the oldest of the group. And so I think coming in, Eichhorn would definitely be the guy. I've heard he's been standing out in fall camp. And so I think people will lean on him as being kind of the leader of that room.
All right, Brian, if you had to pick an offensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who you got?
Okay. I'm going to remind you who my breakout guy was last year. It was Kyrese White. Kyrese White is now in camp as an undrafted free agent with the Denver Broncos, tearing camp up. So I got that one right last year.
No pressure this year.
But for my offensive guy this year, it's got to be Braden Pagan. He comes in from UCLA, just having a tough time with injuries for one, but just not really being able to crack the rotation. He's only got one career catch for 7 yards, and I will guarantee his first catch against UTEP in the first quarter of the first game this year will go for longer than 7 yards. So I'm saying Braden Pagan. He's long, he's lanky, he's got sprinter speed. He's got a great vertical leap. He can go up and get 50-50 balls. He's aggressive in the air, runs great routes, can come in and out of breaks. And so I can't say enough about the impact that I feel Braden Pagan is going to make this year.
All right, well, let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. And similar to the offense, we'll have a new defensive coordinator here for the Aggies. Nick Howell follows Bronco over from New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to New Mexico, he's a defensive coordinator at Vanderbilt for 2 years when Bronco wasn't a coach. Before that, he was with Bronco at Virginia as defensive coordinator from 2016 to 2021. Can you describe the defensive scheme that Coach Howell plans to run here at Utah State?
So as with most defenses, it's always going to be determined by down and distance. But if you were to roll out a depth chart, I think you'd see a 3-3-5. And when I say 3-3-5, I'm meaning 2 defensive tackles, a nose tackle, a defensive tackle, an edge defensive end. And then when we have a will linebacker, they'll actually be more like a walk-up defensive end, kind of like in a Lawrence Taylor type mode.
Yeah.
Okay, so it will give you kind of a 4-2-5 feel, but on paper it would list out as a 3-3-5. The 5 guys in the secondary, 2 corners, 2 safeties, and a nickel.
Well, let's dig into the guys on this defense, and we'll start with this defensive line. The line saw several guys graduate and hit the portal. Defensive end Sion Sione was a big loss. He's off to NC State. He was the Aggie sack leader a year ago. Brian, when I look at this room, I kind of feel really good with the guys on the interior. You got Gabriel Aniquez, Bo Male returning, but the edge is kind of where I have some questions. Got William Hodges, who I think if I remember correctly, he's an older guy, but he was a freshman last year. He won. Yeah. He was our freshman defensive player of the week 1 week a year ago. But he seems to kind of be like the guy with maybe the most experience, since he doesn't have a ton of experience himself. But what are your expectations for this defensive line heading into the season?
So I think this group is going to prove deeper than they appear right now. Leaving spring ball, I was kind of concerned about the depth. I'm going to be honest, but the staff did a great job of identifying their weaknesses. They went out and they snagged a will linebacker, John Gayer. I consider him being out of the College of San Mateo in California. He spent spring ball at California. He signed with California in December, spent spring ball there. and then moved on, and we snagged him real quick once he hit the transfer portal. So I consider John Gayer really a junior college transfer. We got defensive end New Sellison from BYU. He's coming off a season-ending injury from a year ago. He's another Weber State guy that followed the defensive coordinator at BYU to there. Didn't really pan out, so to speak, battled an injury in 2024. He's moved on. He's up here at Utah State now. And defensive tackle Naki Fahina. He was a starter at New Mexico State last year, and just a stud, just a massive kid and very productive. And so to pick a kid like that up out of the transfer portal so late, he might have been our last transfer portal signee, and just a massive pickup for the Aggies.
Yeah, I mentioned the loss of, the leading sack guy from a year ago. Who do you look like? Who does the team, or who do you think, steps up in that absence and kind of creates that havoc, gets pressure on opposing quarterbacks?
I think Inoka Mageo. He missed last year with an injury. He had a great summer and a great fall camp. Blew his knee out game 1 last year, and I really think he's due. He's put in a lot of hard work. He's ready to go week 1, and I think that he's got the strength, the speed, and the agility to really step in and do a nice job of replacing Kean Sloan. Kean Sloan was actually backing up Inoka last year, and when Inoka went down, Kean steps into that starting role and kind of flourished himself, obviously. And so I think Inoka is really ready to reassert himself as the guy along that front 3/4.
Brian, let's say this defensive line is dominant in 2025. It's because who showed out or who took their game to another level.
So I know I just kind of talked about him, but I'm going to go with Inoka Mageo again. I think I think he's really ready to just reassert himself as a leader amongst that group. But I'm going to throw one more in there real quick. At will linebacker, there's a youngster named CJ Naismith who intrigues me. He battled back last year from a shoulder injury early in the year. He played the last 3 games late in the season, and he didn't put up like crazy numbers or anything like that. But what he did was show his speed as an edge rush end, and he forced the action to be sped up. And what he did was force the play that may have been heading this way. He either forced it up the middle or to the back end, and that's where you saw Kean Sloan on the other side making the sacks, cleaning up the mess that CJ Naismith was creating. So I'm kind of interested to see where CJ fits in at the will linebacker. I've heard he's had a great summer and a great fall camp, so I'm looking for big things from CJ.
Well, Brian, let's move over to the linebackers, and similar to the defensive line, this group sees several departures, but I didn't see many transfers come into this room. It looks like this room is going to be highlighted by the return of John Miller and Bronson Oliveo Jr. Given the lack of transfers coming in, is it safe to assume that the coaching staff likes who they got?
I would say so. Like you said, no other transfers brought in. We just kind of rolled with who we signed. They signed a couple of high school kids late. And so I think the starters are obviously going to be John Miller and Bronson Oliveo. I think you'll see some rotational support from JUCO guys, Ty Burton and Matyra Brown, and possibly true freshman return missionary Riker Lotulele. He's been in since January. I'm also hearing big things about true freshman Chris Joe. So I heard that he's better than expected for a kid that really only played safety in high school. They got here. He's already bulked up to 215, 220 pounds, and I guess has really picked things up quickly. So the depth is coming along. It would make me a little nervous just because some of these guys are a little untested, but I think we're in good hands week 1 with John Miller and Bronson Oliveo.
You mentioned the unknown, and given that kind of unknown and maybe some lack of familiarity from Aggies fans, if there is someone in this room that like is going to be that an absolute stud, so to speak, who do you think that might be?
So I think Bronson Oliveo has a huge chance to really step up as being the number one guy. He is another guy that battled injuries early last year. He finally got healthy. He started to rotate in towards the end of the year. In the last 3 games of the year, as a rotational player, he picked up 9 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and 2.5 sacks over the last 4 games of the year. So, although the tackle totals don't really jump off the page, but the tackles for loss, 3 and 2.5 sacks in limited snaps. This isn't him starting the game. This is him rotating in, just giving whoever the starter was at that time a breather. So if he's able to maintain that kind of intensity and production level as a full-time starter, we're going to see big things from him his junior year in 2025, sorry.
Well, let's move over to the secondary. And at this point, I'm sure I sound like a broken record. But again, we see several guys either hit the portal or graduate. It's almost going to be an entire new secondary here in 2025. But I know there's one guy that Aggie fans will be glad to return here, and that's safety Ike Larson. He's someone that barely ever came off the field in 2024. He had 10 pass breakups. He was just a menace back there, and it's at the safety spot. It makes sense. Last year you had Jordan Vincent. I think folks were trying to steer away from him, and maybe that's kind of helped Ike get all those pass breakups. But nonetheless, Ike's a key returner here for the Aggies in 2025. Brian, what are your expectations for this defensive backfield heading into the season?
So I think this is our deepest position group. And with the number of players who transferred in from New Mexico and followed Coach Mendenhall and Coach Howell, I think it's our most prepared group as well. The familiarity is going to go huge with this. The transfer portal JUCO additions that we brought in 2024, these guys all raked in they played 83 games, 68 starts, totaled 369 tackles, 18 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 5 interceptions, 33 pass breakups, 3 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries, blocked 2 kicks, and scored 1 defensive touchdown. That's our JUCO / transfer portal guys and what they're bringing to the table this year. So clearly a ton of production there.
Well, let's take a closer look at the cornerbacks in particular. The Aggies will look to replace J.D. Drew, D.J. Graham II, and Jaden Francois. They do return Noah Flores. But who are the cornerbacks that we need to keep an eye on here in 2025?
So we've got a handful. I've got Noah Avinger, followed the coaching staff from New Mexico. He was an all Mountain West honorable mention last year at safety. Now he's moved to corner, which is his natural position. And I've heard he's just had a fantastic fall camp and is really ready to take the next step forward. We've got Bryson Taylor, who also came from New Mexico, Bobby Arnold, who came from New Mexico, and then we've got a JUCO guy, John Shepard from San Diego Mesa. We've got another senior transfer, Dylan Tucker from Elon, who I've heard has had a great fall camp so far. And we can't forget about EJ Fisk, who's a holdover from last year, but he missed last season and redshirted with a shoulder injury. I've heard he's had a fantastic fall camp as well and really pushing for some time at the nickel spot.
Earlier I mentioned the importance of Ike Larson coming back, but what can you tell us, like his presence and his return, what that means for this Utah State Aggies defense?
Right. So Ike last year, his reputation kind of precedes himself, played in all 12 games, had 11 starts, racked up 80 tackles, 1.5 tackles for loss, 4 picks, 9 pass breakups, just an all league kind of season for him. And from what I understand, he's also taken more of a vocal leadership role, not only in the safety and secondary rooms, but is as a defensive leader as a whole. So he's got a lot of charisma. He's really energetic. And I love that he's starting to bring all that to the table so that the entire team can see that and so that they can kind of feed off of him. And I think him stepping up as a leader on this team is just fantastic for him.
I mentioned earlier, Jordan Vincent had an outstanding season a year ago. Who's kind of stepped up, in that safety room, kind of to help Ike Larson back there?
So I'm going to say that the guy that's going to be the boundary safety is Brevin Hamlin. He's a junior this season. He transferred in from Utah Tech down south in St. George, Utah. Last year as a sophomore, he started all 12 games, racked up 96 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss, 2 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles, and blocked a kick. So just a really active boundary safety.
All right, Brian. Well, just like on the offensive side, going to ask you here on the defensive side, if you had to pick a defensive player to have a breakout type season in 2025, who you got?
Brevin Hamlin. I know I just barely talked about him, but let me rave about him just a little bit more. During his 2-year career with the Trailblazers, he played in 23 games, had 14 starts, pulled down 139 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, 1 sack, 3 pass breakups, 2 forced fumbles, and a block kick. Played as a true freshman, right from jump. He's crazy athletic. And because of that athleticism, he does a great job just running all over the field. He's got great play recognition, and so he's able to get to the ball quickly, whether it's in the air or on the ground, covering the run. He does a good job of deceptively covering up his coverage assignments, so it's tough for quarterbacks to really get a read on him. And so that allows him to kind of shade one way while he can hurry and break over another. He's got great closing speed, and he's just a fantastic weapon in the run game. He can really step up into the box, and if a running back gets into the second level, they're not getting past him. So Brevin Hamlin is going to be my guy in 2025.
Well, Brian, we've talked offense, we've talked some defense. Now let's move over to the special teams. How are those units looking, and are there any concerns?
I don't think there's any concerns per se. The long snapper, sophomore Hiram Hatch, played all 12 games last year at New Mexico, so he moves over and should fit in seamlessly for special teams coach Brett Arkalian. Carter Brown should be our kicker. He's a redshirt junior. He moved over from Cincinnati last year. He started the season but got hurt, and so he was forced to redshirt. But he played in 26 games at both Cincinnati and Arizona State. Knocked down 29 of 38 field goals and 71 of 72 PATs. So he's going to be solid there. Our punter, I would say, is the only thing that is probably going through a competition phase right now during fall camp. We've got sophomore transfer Landon Reckow. He comes in from BYU. And we've also got true freshman Zach Robbins. He's just coming off a mission. He was rated by the Chris Saylor kicking school as the second best punter in the nation. And so I think between Reckow and Robbins, that's going to be a pretty good battle. And maybe we'll even see both of them. They could just maybe be situational punters. So we'll have to see how that shakes out in week 1.
Well, now that we're just a couple of weeks away from the season here, which position group or groups do you think is the most concerning heading into 2025?
I'll say linebacker, and it's just because of the lack of surefire proven depth at the collegiate level. The JUCO transfers, Ty Burton, Matar Brown, Samson Alafipo, and the true freshmen that I mentioned earlier, Riker Lotulele and Chris Joe, they all come in highly rated, but they don't have anything really to show as far as in-game action on a major college football field, right? The JUCO guys are it's always a step up and a transition period, and it's an even bigger transition period coming from the high school ranks, and in Riker Lotulele's case, coming off a 2-year church mission and a gray shirt season. So the depth is there on paper. It's telling you that it's there, but there's no statistical basis behind it. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So linebacker
you want to see it on the field.
Right. There's nothing to see on the field yet. So linebacker is definitely the position group I would throw out there right now.
In today's age of NIL, revenue sharing, and the transfer portal, what has Coach Mendenhall communicated as it pertains to his recruiting philosophy there at Utah State?
So I'm not sure how many programs may have this type of system in place, but Broncos installed a 5-tier color-coded system, and each player in each color makes the same amount of NIL money. So it's all based on off-the-field work in the weight room. They have quarterly testing to kind of see if you're hitting your benchmarks, then you may be able to, or excelling and upping your benchmarks, you may move up a color. If you're not hitting, you may move down a color. But everybody wears a specific color shirt that goes along with this tiered system. And in my opinion, it kind of eliminates the guesswork for the players. When it comes to NIL stuff, everybody just gets to see, oh, well, this guy's a black shirt, so I know what this guy's making. And these guys are white shirts, and so I know what these guys are making. And I think that kind of just leaves out a lot of guesswork. Like I said, it's just cut and dried, and everybody knows what everybody else is getting.
In their short time there at Logan, how do you feel the staff at Utah State's done navigating the portal?
They've been very active, very active. So in recent interviews, Bronco Mendenhall has said that we've got 87 new players. He had to dial that back a little bit and kind of reassess it and say, well, we've actually got 70 new players on the roster, and 17 guys are in what they call the mission program. So they've signed with the Aggies, and they're out serving church missions, and are in different phases of their mission, 1 year, 2 years, so on. And so what they did is what they brought in this year was 27 transfers from other universities, 13 JUCO transfers, and then they've added 17 true freshmen. And that shows the type of rebuild that we kind of had to endure this year. And they've carried that on over the summer. As far as the 2026 recruiting goes, we already have 13 commitments, 1 JUCO guy, and 12 high school kids. And so they've really attacked, I guess, recruiting from 2 different levels, and have done a great job at assessing what they needed. I felt like they closed the high school recruiting in February really well. They added a couple of 3-star receivers really late, Ty Olson, Nico Boncourt, and a kid from Texas. Shoot, I have forgotten his name. Caleb Mitchell. There we go. Caleb Mitchell. And like I've mentioned, linebacker Chris Joe, all really highly rated guys. So they closed really well there. Like I mentioned, we closed really well in the transfer portal, adding John Gayer, New Sellison, Carson Touaget, John Gayer. So I feel like this staff has done a great job of assessing needs and aggressively filling those needs.
What do you think will be the main strength of this 2025 team?
Preparedness, I think. Attention to detail. Bronco won't allow anything less. He's no stranger to any of our conference opponents. He played several of them last year at New Mexico. He didn't play Air Force, but Air Force is Air Force. It doesn't matter whether Fisher DeBerry is the coach or Troy Calhoun is the coach. Air Force is who you're going to get. I was once told by Matt Wells that you're only as good as your last 4 games. And so I expect this team to be a better team in October than we will be in September. But I think that this team will be very prepared, very fired up, and very ready to go when we kick off August 30th against UTEP.
What does success look like for the Aggies here in 2025?
Success to me is bowl eligibility. Plain and simple. With 3 of the first 4 games at home, we've got UTEP, Air Force, and McNeese State. We've got a road game against Texas A&M, sandwiched in between Air Force and UTEP. So, but winning all 3 home games is certainly doable. And starting out 3-1 goes a long way towards setting the tone for the final 8 games of the season.
When you look at those final 8 games, is there like a critical stretch there, or?
I honestly think it starts right at week 1 with UTEP. And, I know it sounds cliche, but it's honestly just 1 week at a time, especially with a group of kids that's so new to each other. They just have to learn to trust and build 1 week after another, and winning games is going to do a huge, huge boost to their confidence and let them know that, hey, we can compete here. We can win here. Let's go for it.
Well, Brian, we've covered a lot of ground today, but is there anything else you want to share or think that we should know about this 2025 Utah State Aggies football team?
I think we're going to be better than most expect. I think we're going to be competitive. I think that the kids will give a max effort every single play of every game. And I think we'll play an entertaining brand of football that should appeal to Aggie Nation. And I think they're going to be fun to watch. I think this is a likable group of guys. I know that there hasn't been a ton of information really put out there from the coaching staff, but I think the coaching staff is a likable group of guys. The players seem to really relate to them. And I think that the family atmosphere and what Coach Mendenhall has built in the short amount of time he's been here is really going to manifest itself on the field. And I think, Vegas has us at 4.5 wins. I think we can get to 7, to be honest.
Well, Brian, we just want to thank you for taking some time out of your day to spend with us and share your knowledge. We greatly appreciate it. But before we let you go, I want to give you an opportunity to share with our listeners where they can find you and maybe some things you have coming up over there at the Big Blue USU Aggie News.
So I appreciate the shout out. Thank you, Justice. You can find me at bigblueusuaggienews.com or on X at Brian Phillips A1. What I've got coming up is a comprehensive overview of our current commits. I like to do a weekly profile on a recruit of the week. So I kind of go over the kids' stats and how they performed in their high school games and kind of hand out a weekly award. You'll start seeing some depth charts coming up, and I'll also have a week 1 preview versus UTEP coming out during game week.
Awesome. Well, Brian, thank you again. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. And if you're listening in podcast form, please rate and review on Amazon Music, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Thank you all for your support. And until the next time, we are the G5 Hive.